Hello, Rupert Parry of the Flying Buttresses, here today for XTRAX and Stockton International Festival. A big thank you to both of those organisations and to Jeremy Shine for nominating us for this artist profile. Today we'll be taking a behind-the-scenes glimpse at the making of our new exciting puppetry experience, What the Tortoise Taught Us. A blend of high-tech animatronics and improv comedy, What the Tortoise Taught Us combines interactive mindfulness activities with environmental themes and encourages audiences to put down their phones, amble into the slow lane, and take part in a calming drawing exercise, led by Zelva, the oldest and wisest tortoise in the world. She may be carrying an enormous burden on her shoulders, but Zelva takes it all in her stride, thanks to her positive attitude and relaxed approach to life. That restaurant in the background of the photo missed a golden opportunity to temporarily rebrand themselves as Tortzilla for the afternoon. All tortoises share a love of art, which is presumably why so many people choose to name their pets after the famous Renaissance masters: Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, and of course Michelangelo. Whoa, Zelva, you're getting pretty abstract there. Still, you are probably breathing in a lot of fumes from that marker pen. Zelva was designed and built over a 3-year period by Danielle Brooke and myself. Nick Sparks designed her electronic control system, and Daniel Rickard and Jonathan Richards both made invaluable contributions to the project. Here is a brief look at some of the processes that help bring her to life. It starts off with the construction of an armature, over which the sculpture of the shell can be built up. Here we are cutting out bulkheads and ribs from a sheet of plywood and assembling them like a large puzzle. Once this structure is complete, we can fill in the gaps with foam and carve it to a rough shape. We then use lasers and flexible tapes to accurately position our scale forms so that both sides of the shell would remain symmetrical when we started to build up the secondary forms in clay. Once all the detail was carved in, we built up 16 interlocking mould pieces that captured the impression of the sculpture and could be reassembled to cast out a fiberglass reproduction of the original clay and wood sculpt. Next, her legs and head were modelled and multi-part fiberglass moulds were fabricated to capture all of the forms and textures. These were then injected with silicone to make flexible skins. Mechanical components were designed in CAD software and cut out of solid aluminium and steel over on our CNC milling machine. Once the parts were cut out, secondary operations like adding countersunk or threaded holes were done by hand. Here Danielle is using a small hydraulic press to fit 2 rotary bearings into a linkage that will form part of Zelva's robotic legs. This crank is having a keyway slot broached into it. That hardened steel tool is being forced through the soft aluminium, cutting a square hole as it goes. This works great unless it drops through the gap in the floorboards. Luckily, the ever-resourceful Danielle has a creative solution and is using a borescopic camera to search under the floor for the tool, like a retrieval team searching for a shipwreck on the bottom of the ocean. There are about 1,000 individual components that make up Zelva's mechanical assembly, many of which were entirely custom parts made in-house. Once the mechanical elements are machined, they are assembled and fitted to the character and covered with an epoxy core and adjusted and tweaked until they run smoothly. This is footage from the first time that the carapace was mounted onto its motion base. This mechanism subtly tilts the shell from side to side to give the impression of Zelva shifting her weight as she walks. If we speed the footage up a bit, the effect will be more pronounced. We jump to the end of the build now, and Nick Sparks is working his programming magic, tuning all of the control loops that synchronise the motors that animate her gait. Some early rehearsal sessions on grass. Zelva and I are working on a sequence that will become a gag in the act. This is an exciting time, as we have handed over the robot to our animators, Frances Allison and Sarah Jane Codd, and we are seeing her come to life in their skilled hands. This is just a tiny peek at the work that goes into building up a small sequence of actions, one carefully thought-out movement at a time. Aspects of personality and subtleties of motion are starting to emerge as we try out different ideas. She is beginning to move less robotically and more organically. It's Britain, so of course it started to rain. Undeterred, we have covered our priceless one-of-a-kind robot with a plastic bag and carried on rehearsing. This is getting pretty close to the final sequence now. Here we have the payoff for all that work when we hand over the leaves to an unsuspecting volunteer and allow them to actually feed Zelva. which can be really quite a magical and unique experience. Training different movement sequences for different scenarios allows for adaptation to unforeseen events, such as when a cheeky volunteer whips the leaves away at the last second. Gesundheit! This was filmed back in 2019 when spraying people with water droplets was perfectly acceptable. So where next for the show in the age of social distancing? We are now offering a version of the act which focuses on visual rather than tactile storytelling. Enter the Time Trader, a nomadic merchant from the Grand Saratoga Desert who follows the herds of immortal migratory tortoises who eternally wander the dunes, leaving nothing but footprints in their wake. It is from these impressions in the sand that the attendant time traders extract the very essence of time in physical form and bottle it up in ornate hourglasses where its time-bending properties can be stored until later. We have all wished for more time at some point or other, so make sure you seek out Zelva and spend a little time with the Time Trader.